I sat in Dr. Chen's waiting room, my hands trembling as I gripped the crumpled tissue in my palm. The panic attack had hit me during my morning lecture, and it had taken everything in me not to run screaming from the classroom. My chest still felt tight, like invisible hands were squeezing the air from my lungs. This was my third emergency session this month. My phone buzzed. Mom, sweetheart, I'm so sorry, but we need to cancel your appointment today. Your father and I are taking Lily to the Serenity Springs Resort. It's her birthday weekend, remember? We can't possibly leave her at home, and the spa package we booked is non-refundable. We'll reschedule your therapy for next week, okay? Dr. Chen will understand. I stared at the message, feeling something crack inside my chest. Not break. That had happened long ago. This was different. This was the sound of the last thread snapping. In my first life, I had walked out of that waiting room, apologized to the receptionist, and driven home in a dissociative haze. I'd spent that weekend alone in my apartment, surviving on sleeping pills and the numbing glow of my laptop screen. 3 months later, I'd swallowed an entire bottle of my anxiety medication and never woken up. But I had woken up. I woke up in my 20-year-old old body, lying in my childhood bedroom, with 10 years of memories that hadn't happened yet. Memories of every betrayal, every casual cruelty, every time my family chose Lily's wants over my needs. Memories of my slow, painful unraveling and the cold bathtub where I'd finally let go. This time, I texted back. Okay, Mom, have fun. Then I walked up to the reception desk with a smile. Hi, Sarah. I need to let you know that my parents are canceling my appointment today. However, I'd like to keep it and pay for it myself. Can I set up my own account? Sarah looked surprised but nodded. Of course, Claire. Let me get your information. As I handed over my debit card, the one I'd secretly opened at a different bank, the one my parents knew nothing about, I felt something shift inside me. In my first life, I'd never stood up for myself. I'd been the good daughter, the understanding sister, the one who never made waves. I'd bent and bent and bent until I finally broke. Not this time. This time, I knew exactly how the next 10 years would unfold if I let them. I knew that Lily would borrow my college fund to start a boutique that would fail within a year. I knew that my parents would tell me to get over it, that family was more important than money. I knew that I'd graduate with crushing debt while Lily lived rent-free in their house, and that I'd work 3 jobs to stay afloat while they took her on vacation after vacation. I knew that in 5 years, when I'd finally land my dream job at Morrison Tech, Lily would seduce my boyfriend Marcus, and my parents would beg me to forgive her because she didn't mean to hurt you. I knew that I'd forgive her because I always forgave her, and that Marcus would leave me anyway. I knew that in 8 years, when our grandmother died, Lily would manipulate the will and take everything, and my parents would stand by her because, you're so strong, Claire, you'll be fine. I knew how every cut would feel, how every betrayal would hollow me out a little more, until there was nothing left but an empty shell going through the motions. But most importantly, I knew exactly how to stop it. The first 20 years of my first life had been a masterclass in invisibility. I was born 3 years before Lily, but you'd never know I was the eldest. Where I was quiet and studious, Lily was bright and charismatic. Where I got good grades through grinding effort, Lily breezed through with charm and just enough work to get by. Where I asked for things I needed, Lily demanded things she wanted, and somehow her wants always seemed more important than my needs. Claire doesn't mind, my mother would say, handing Lily the birthday money that was supposed to be split between us. She's so mature for her age. She understands. I did mind. I just never said so. The pattern began early. When I was 7 and Lily was 4, I'd asked for piano lessons. My parents said they couldn't afford it. 3 months later, Lily decided she wanted ballet, and suddenly there was money for classes, recitals, and costumes. When I pointed this out, my father had looked at me with disappointment. Don't be selfish, Claire. Your sister is little. She needs activities to help her develop. So I learned to be small, to want less, to need nothing. In high school, the difference became even starker. I was anxious, awkward, struggling with depression that no one seemed to notice. Lily was popular, perfect, the golden child who could do no wrong. When I asked to see a therapist, my mother had pursed her lips. There's nothing wrong with you, Claire. You're just being dramatic. You need to try harder to be happy. But when Lily had a bad breakup in her sophomore year, they immediately found her a therapist, paid for weekly sessions, and threw her a healing retreat weekend at a spa resort. The same Serenity Springs resort they were taking her to today. In my first life, I hadn't started therapy until college when my roommate had dragged me to the campus health center after finding me having a panic attack on the bathroom floor. Even then, I'd had to beg my parents to help with the copays, and they'd made it clear that every session was a burden on the family finances, right before booking Lily a spring break trip to Cancun. That's how I'd lived for 23 years. Always secondary, always an afterthought, always understanding. The breaking point in my first life had come on my 23rd birthday. I'd been working at Morrison Tech for 3 months, finally feeling like I might build a real life for myself. I'd invited my family to dinner at a nice restaurant, my treat, because I'd wanted them to be proud of me. They'd canceled at the last minute. Lily had gotten invited to an influencer event, and of course, Mom and Dad had to go support her. "We'll celebrate with you next week," Mom had promised. They never did. That night, Marcus had broken up with me. He'd been cheating with Lily for 2 months. "I'm sorry, Claire," he'd said, not meeting my eyes. "But you have to understand, Lily is just more alive. You're so quiet, so sad all the time. I need someone who makes me feel good." I'd gone home to my empty apartment and realized that no one would notice if I disappeared. No one would really miss me. I was already a ghost in my own life. So I'd let go. But dying, I'd discovered, wasn't the end. I'd woken up on my 20th birthday in my childhood bedroom with my mother knocking on my door to tell me that Lily wanted to borrow my car for the day. The deja vu had been so overwhelming that I'd thrown up. It had taken me 3 days to accept that this was real. 3 days of testing my memories, checking dates, realizing that I'd been given an impossible second chance, and I'd decided that this time I wouldn't be the good daughter. This time I'd be the smart one. I'd spent the first 6 months of my rebirth carefully, quietly, rearranging my life. I'd opened a secret bank account and began funneling my part-time job money into it. I'd gotten a new therapist, Dr. Chen, and paid for it myself, making sure my parents never had access to my medical information. I'd maintained the appearance of being the same old Claire, understanding, accommodating, invisible. But underneath, I was planning. I knew every mistake my family would make. I knew that my father was going to make a terrible investment in his friend's startup next year, losing $30,000. I knew that Lily was going to get caught plagiarizing a term paper in her junior year, but that my parents would blame the professor and hire an expensive lawyer to make it go away. I knew that my mother was going to co-sign on a car loan for Lily, who would total the car and stop making payments, ruining Mom's credit. I knew every crack in their foundation, and I knew exactly where to apply pressure. Today, this canceled therapy appointment was the moment I'd been waiting for. The moment where I'd decided, in my first life, to keep sacrificing myself. The moment where I'd chosen, yet again, to be understanding. Not this time. This time, I was done asking them for help. This time, I was going to help myself. Dr. Chen was a small woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a direct manner that I appreciated. In my first life, I'd seen her for 2 years before I died. She'd been the only person who'd tried to make me see what my family was doing to me, but by then, I'd been too far gone to listen. This time, I was listening. "Your family canceled your appointment so they could take your sister to a spa," Dr. Chen said, making a note. "And this is for her birthday?" "Yes, her 21st. They're making a whole weekend of it." I twisted my hands together. "They asked me to come too, actually, as a family bonding thing." "But you have class on Monday." "Yes, and I'm already behind in organic chemistry because I had to miss last week when Lily needed someone to help her move into her new apartment." I laughed, but it sounded bitter. Mom said I was being selfish for prioritizing school over family. Dr. Chen set down her pen. "Claire, I want you to think about something. In a healthy family system, your needs would matter as much as your sister's wants. Do you see the difference there? Needs versus wants. I need therapy to manage my panic disorder. Lily wants a spa day." Exactly, and yet your family consistently prioritizes her wants over your needs. Why do you think that is? In my first life, I hadn't been able to answer that question. I'd made excuses, rationalized, blamed myself. But now, with the clarity of hindsight and death, I could see it plainly. Because I let them, I said quietly. Because I never fight back, I just accept it. And why do you accept it? Because I'm afraid. The words came out in a whisper. I'm afraid that if I stand up for myself, they'll stop loving me. And then I'll have no one. Dr. Chen leaned forward. Claire, I'm going to tell you something important. If someone's love is conditional on you never having needs of your own, that's not love. That's exploitation. I felt tears prick my eyes. In my first life, she'd told me the same thing, 2 years too late. I'd been so broken by then that I couldn't believe her. But now, with the wisdom of a life already lived, I felt the truth of it settle into my bones. What do I do? I asked. You start putting yourself first. You start saying no. You start building a life that doesn't revolve around managing their emotions and meeting their expectations. She paused. It's going to be hard. They're going to push back. They're going to tell you you're selfish, ungrateful, difficult. But Claire, you deserve to take up space in your own life. I nodded, wiping my eyes. I know, I'm starting to see that. Good. Now, let's talk about boundaries. We spent the next hour discussing concrete strategies. How to say no without explaining or justifying. How to stop volunteering information about my life. How to financially separate from my family. How to build a support system outside of them. I already knew all of this from my first life. These were lessons I'd learned too late, in scattered therapy sessions between crises. But hearing it again, armed with my foreknowledge, felt like assembling a weapon. By the time I left Dr. Chen's office, I felt calm, purposeful. My phone buzzed with a text from Lily. Thanks for being so understanding, sis. You're the best. Mom and Dad said we can celebrate when we get back. They wouldn't celebrate with me. In my first life, they'd come home exhausted and distracted, and my birthday had passed without mention. When I'd brought it up a week later, my mother had said, "Oh, honey, you know we love you. We don't need a special day to show it." But they'd never loved me the way they loved Lily. They loved the idea of me, the good daughter, the one who never caused problems, the one who made their lives easier by needing nothing. I texted back, "Have fun." Then I blocked their numbers. The decision to go no contact wasn't impulsive, even though it seemed that way. I'd spent 6 months preparing for this moment. I had my own bank account, my own therapy, my own phone plan. I'd been slowly moving my important belongings out of my parents' house and into my studio apartment near campus. I'd already started building the life I'd wished for in my first life, one where I wasn't tethered to their approval. But I wasn't ready to completely cut ties yet. That would come later. For now, I was simply stepping back, creating distance, becoming unavailable. I unblocked their numbers after 3 hours, long enough to make a point, short enough to avoid a full-blown crisis. When my phone exploded with messages, I answered with careful brevity. Mom. Claire, what's going on? Why did you block us? Me. Sorry, phone glitch. Having a busy weekend? Talk soon. Dad. Your mother is very upset. Call her. Me. Sorry, studying. Can't talk right now. Lily. Why are you being weird? Me. Not being weird, just busy. Have fun at the spa. Short, breezy. Giving them nothing to hook into. This was my new strategy. Gray rock. Be boring. Be unavailable. Give them no emotional reactions to feed on, no vulnerabilities to exploit. In my first life, I'd learned about gray rock technique from a Reddit post 3 months before I died, and I'd thought bitterly about how much pain I could have avoided if I'd known about it earlier. Now I was using every tool I'd learned too late. The weekend passed quietly. I studied, I went to yoga, I had coffee with my roommate Hannah. I didn't think about my family at all. In my first life, I'd spent that weekend having panic attacks and crying, convinced that I was defective, that something was wrong with me for feeling hurt. This time, I felt free. On Sunday night, my mother called. Claire, we had the most wonderful time. Lily looked absolutely radiant. The spa treatments were divine. You really should have come with us, sweetheart. We could have bonded. Glad you had fun, I said neutrally. We're planning to celebrate your birthday next weekend. How about Sunday brunch? In my first life, I'd agreed eagerly, desperately grateful for the scraps of attention. Then they'd canceled the day before because Lily had a hangover and didn't feel like going out. I have plans next weekend, I said. Silence. My mother didn't know how to respond to me saying no. What plans? Just plans, maybe another time. Claire, are you upset about something? Her voice took on that edge, the one that meant I was being difficult, that I was causing problems. No, I'm fine, just busy. Thanks for calling, Mom. I hung up before she could guilt-trip me further. My phone immediately rang again. I sent it to voicemail. This was power, I realized. The power of unavailability, of not explaining, of not caring about their disappointment. In my first life, their disapproval had been my greatest fear. Now, having already died once, having already lived through the worst they could do to me, I felt untouchable. What could they take from me that I hadn't already lost? The months that followed were a delicate dance. I remained superficially connected to my family, responding to occasional texts, showing up to major holidays, maintaining a thin veneer of normalcy. But I was no longer available for emotional labor, for last-minute favors, for being Lily's support system. When Lily texted asking me to help her with a class project, I said I was busy. When my mother called asking me to pick up Lily from a party at 2 a.m. because she'd been drinking, I said she should call an Uber. When my father asked me to co-sign on Lily's credit card application because she's building her credit and you have such a good score, I said no without explanation. Each boundary I set was met with confusion, then irritation, then anger. My mother started leaving long voicemails about how I'd changed and how she was worried about me. My father sent curt texts about family responsibility. Lily whined that I was being mean to her. I responded to all of it with bland pleasantness and zero emotional engagement. Sorry, can't help. That doesn't work for me. I understand you're disappointed. Never explaining, never justifying, never arguing. Gray rock, gray rock, gray rock. And something amazing happened. They started leaving me alone. Not completely. My mother still called regularly, still tried to pull me into family drama, but the constant demands stopped. They stopped assuming I'd drop everything for them. They stopped treating me like an extension of their family unit rather than a separate person. I'd read once that you teach people how to treat you. In my first life, I'd taught them that I had no boundaries, that I'd accept anything, that my needs didn't matter. This time, I was teaching them something different. Meanwhile, I was building the life I'd always wanted. I'd used my foreknowledge strategically. I knew that Morrison Tech was going to blow up in the next 2 years. I'd watched it happen from the outside in my first life, kicking myself for not investing when I had the chance. This time, I'd taken the money in my secret account and bought stock at $8 per share. In my first life, it had hit $240 per share before splitting. I'd just secured my financial future. I'd also avoided all the mistakes I'd made the first time around. I didn't waste time on my ex-boyfriend Derek, who'd cheated on me before Marcus. I didn't take an unpaid internship at a startup that would fold in 6 months. I didn't lend money to my friend Ashley, who'd never paid me back. Instead, I focused ruthlessly on my own success. I networked strategically, leveraging my knowledge of who would become important in my industry. I cultivated relationships with professors who would write me killer recommendation letters. I positioned myself perfectly for the opportunities I knew were coming. By the end of my junior year, I'd secured a prestigious research position that wouldn't be posted publicly for another 2 weeks. I'd asked for it directly, walked into Professor Morrison's office with a proposal, and gotten it on the spot. Professor Morrison, who would go on to found Morrison Tech, though he didn't know it yet. In my first life, I'd been too scared to approach him, too convinced I wasn't good enough. I'd watched from the sidelines as other students got the opportunities I'd wanted. This time, I'd walked in like I belonged there because I knew that in the future I would. You have remarkable initiative, Claire, he'd said, looking impressed. Most students wait for opportunities to come to them. I'd smiled. I've learned that if you want something, you have to go after it. It was a lesson I'd learned by dying. The first real confrontation came in the summer before my senior year. My grandmother, my father's mother, called me out of the blue. In my first life, we'd fallen out of touch, and I'd always regretted it. She'd been the only family member who'd ever really seen me, but I'd been so consumed with trying to win my parents' approval that I'd neglected the one person who'd actually loved me unconditionally. She died while I was working those 3 jobs, barely scraping by, and I'd been too broke to fly home for the funeral. That guilt had eaten at me until the end. Claire Bear, and I them Bear, she said, using her old nickname for me. I haven't heard from you in ages. Your mother says you've been too busy to call. I felt a pang of guilt. Some things were the same even in this timeline. But I pushed it aside and smiled into the phone. Hi, Grandma. I'm sorry, I should have called. How are you? I'm old and cranky, but I want to see you. Can you come visit me this weekend? In my first life, I'd made excuses. My parents had made it clear that visiting Grandma was a duty, not a pleasure, and I'd absorbed their disdain. It was only after her death that I'd realized what I'd lost. I'd love to, I said immediately. I'll drive up Saturday morning. Wonderful. Come hungry. I'll make your favorite pot roast. When I told my mother about the visit, she frowned. You're driving 3 hours to see her? Claire, you know how she is. She'll just corner you and complain about your father. That's okay. I miss her. Well, if you're going, you should take Lily with you. Grandma hasn't seen her in ages either. There it was, the automatic assumption that everything I did should include Lily. No, I said simply. What is this? What do you mean, no? I mean, no, I'm going alone. This is my visit with Grandma. My mother's voice went cold as Claire, that's incredibly selfish. Your grandmother would love to see both her granddaughters. Then Lily can schedule her own visit. She's too busy with her internship. Lily's internship was at a boutique where she got to shop with a discount and occasionally folded clothes. She'd bragged about it on Instagram, but somehow never mentioned actually working. I'm sure she can find time if she wants to, I said. But I'm going alone. I don't understand what's gotten into you lately. You're being so difficult. I felt that old familiar guilt trying to rise up, that ingrained need to smooth things over, to make my mother happy. But I pushed it down. I'm not being difficult. I'm spending time with my grandmother. I'll talk to you later, Mom. I hung up before she could argue further. The drive to Grandma's house was beautiful. I had forgotten how much I loved the winding country roads, the way the sunlight filtered through the trees. In my first life, I'd been so consumed with anxiety and guilt that I'd never enjoyed simple things like this. Grandma met me at the door, and I felt tears spring to my eyes. She looked exactly as I remembered, small and sturdy, with sharp blue eyes and silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. In my first life, I'd last seen her in a hospital bed, frail and fading. This time, she was vibrant, alive, here. I hugged her tightly. Easy there, Claire Bear. You'll squeeze the stuffing out of me. But she was smiling, hugging me back just as hard. Inside, her house smelled like rosemary and home. We ate pot roast and talked about everything, my classes, my research position, my plans for the future. She listened with real interest, asking thoughtful questions, treating me like a person rather than a supporting character in someone else's story. It wasn't until after dinner, sitting on her porch with sweet tea, that she brought up the real reason for the visit. Your mother called me, Grandma said. She's concerned about you. I laughed. I bet she is. She says you've been distant, cold, not yourself. Did she tell you why? She says you're angry about something, but she doesn't know what. She thinks maybe you're depressed again and need to go back on medication. Of course. In my mother's mind, there was something wrong with me, not with how I was being treated. I'm not depressed, I said. I'm actually happier than I've been in years. I've just stopped letting them treat me like I don't matter. Grandma was quiet for a moment, rocking in her chair. Tell me what happened. So I did. Not everything. I couldn't tell her about the rebirth, about dying and coming back. But I told her about the therapy appointment canceled for Lily's spa day, about years of being an afterthought, about finally deciding I deserved better. When I finished, Grandma reached over and took my hand. "I've watched this for years," she said quietly. "The way they treat you compared to Lily. I've tried talking to your father about it, but he doesn't see it. He thinks because you're strong and capable, you don't need the same support." "I do need support," I whispered. "I just stopped asking for it." "I know, honey, and I'm sorry I didn't do more to help you. I thought it would get better as you both grew up. But it hasn't, has it?" I shook my head. "Your father is my son, and I love him. But he's made mistakes as a parent. They both have." She squeezed my hand. "But I want you to know something. You matter, Claire. Your needs matter. Your feelings matter. And I'm proud of you for finally standing up for yourself." I started crying then, ugly tears that I'd been holding back for months, years really, across 2 lifetimes. "I feel so guilty," I sobbed. "Like I'm abandoning my family, like I'm being a bad daughter." "You're not abandoning anyone. You're just refusing to light yourself on fire to keep them warm." She pulled me close. "That's not abandonment, sweetheart. That's survival." We talked for hours. I learned things about Grandma I'd never known, about her own difficult relationship with her mother, about the boundaries she'd had to set, about the price of being a woman who refused to make herself small. "I have something I want to talk to you about," she said, as the sun was setting. "I've been thinking about updating my will." I tensed. In my first life, this was where it had all gone wrong. Grandma had left everything, equally to my father and his brother, Uncle James. My father had then split his inheritance equally between Lily and me, except Lily had convinced him to let her borrow my half to invest in her boutique, which had failed spectacularly. I'd never seen a penny. "You don't need to talk to me about that, Grandma," I said carefully. "Actually, I do. I've been watching how your parents favor Lily, and I've been watching how you've handled it. You've never complained to me, never asked me for anything, but I can see the toll it's taken." She paused. "I want to set up a trust fund for you. Just for you." My heart stopped. "Grandma, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to. You're going to do great things, Claire. I can feel it. But I want to make sure you have a cushion, a safety net, so you never have to depend on anyone who doesn't value you." In my first life, this conversation had never happened. I'd been too distant, too consumed with my own pain, and Grandma had died thinking I didn't care about her. "What about Lily?" I asked. "Won't that cause problems?" "Lily will inherit from your parents, and she'll get a portion from me too. But you, Claire, are getting something extra, because you need it more, not financially, but emotionally. You need to know that someone saw you, someone valued you, someone thought you were worth investing." Then I hugged her, crying again. Thank you so much." "Don't thank me yet. I'm not planning on dying anytime soon." She smiled. "But I am planning on being around to see you succeed. And Claire, I want you to promise me something." "Anything." "Promise me you won't let them make you small again. You're meant for big things, sweetheart. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." I promised. And I meant it. Senior year was my victory lap. I had a solid safety net, Morrison tech stock that was steadily climbing, a trust fund being set up by Grandma, a research position that would look incredible on grad school applications. I had a therapist who actually helped me, boundaries that protected me, and a growing sense of my own worth. Most importantly, I had foreknowledge. I knew that in October, Professor Morrison would approach his top research students about joining his startup. In my first life, I'd been so ground down by my family situation, so broke from giving money to Lily that I'd had to turn down the equity offer because I couldn't afford to work for below market salary. This time, I'd be ready. I also knew that Lily was about to make her biggest mistake yet. In my first life, it had happened in November of my senior year. Lily had plagiarized a major term paper, not just a paragraph or two, but the entire thing, copied from an obscure journal article she'd found online. She'd gotten caught because her writing style was completely different from her usual work, and her professor had run it through plagiarism detection software. My parents had lost their minds. They'd hired an expensive lawyer, threatened to sue the university, accused the professor of targeting Lily. They'd spent $15,000 fighting it, and in the end, Lily had gotten away with a slap on the wrist, a failing grade on the paper, but no formal discipline on her record. Meanwhile, I'd been struggling to pay for my own textbooks, but when I'd asked for help, my mother had snapped at me that money was tight because of Lily's legal issues. This time, I was going to let it play out exactly as it had before. But I wouldn't be there to watch. I wouldn't be there to be the emotional support for my parents, to be the good daughter who understood why Lily's crisis took precedence over everything else. I would be too busy building my empire. In October, right on schedule, Professor Morrison called me into his office. "Claire, I want to talk to you about an opportunity." He leaned back in his chair, looking excited. "I'm starting a company. A few of my colleagues and I have been developing some technology that we think could revolutionize data analysis in the biotech sector. We're ready to take it commercial." I'd heard this speech before in my first life, from students who'd taken the opportunity I'd passed on. I'd memorized every detail, knowing I'd need it someday. "Morrison Tech," I said. He looked surprised. "How did you know?" "Lucky guess. It's a good name, professional but personal." "Well, we're putting together a small team to launch. I'm approaching my top students to see if anyone's interested in joining as founding employees. The salary wouldn't be great at first, but there would be equity, and if we succeed, yes," I said immediately. He blinked. "You don't want to know more details? Think about it?" "I don't need to. I trust you, I believe in the technology, and I want in." I leaned forward. 10% equity, vesting over 4 years with a 1-year cliff. Salary at 75% of market rate for the first year, scaling up as we hit funding milestones. Professor Morrison stared at me. "You've been researching startup compensation." I like to be prepared. In truth, I'd learned these terms the hard way in my first life, watching the students who'd said yes become millionaires while I struggled with student debt. Is that fair? It's very fair, maybe too fair. Most students would ask for less because they don't know better. "I know better," I said. And I did. I knew that Morrison Tech would be worth $800 million within 5 years. 10% of that, even after dilution, would be generational wealth. He smiled. "You're hired. Welcome to the founding team, Claire." I shook his hand, feeling the weight of my future settle into place. In my first life, I'd watched from the outside. This time, I was building the company from the inside. Lily's plagiarism scandal broke in November, right on schedule. I was in the Morrison Tech office, a cramped space above a coffee shop filled with whiteboards and secondhand furniture, when my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. And again. Finally, I stepped outside to call her back. "Claire, thank God, we have an emergency." "What happened, say?" "It's Lily. She's being accused of plagiarism, which is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. Her professor is clearly targeting her because she's pretty and popular and he's some bitter old man who—" "Mom, slow down. What exactly happened?" She explained it all, every detail exactly as I remembered. Lily had copied a paper, gotten caught, and was now facing academic discipline. "We need you to come home," Mom said. "We're meeting with a lawyer tomorrow and we need to present a united family front. You can talk about what a good student Lily is, how she'd never cheat, how—" "No," I said. Silence. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean I'm not coming home. I have work." "Claire, this is a family emergency." "Mom, if Lily plagiarized, that's on her. I'm not going to lie for her." "She didn't plagiarize. She didn't cite properly. It's a simple mistake." I closed my eyes. In my first life, I'd believed this. I'd rushed home, missed a week of classes, sat in meetings with lawyers and administrators, vouched for Lily's character. And it had all been for nothing. She'd been guilty, and I'd known it deep down, but I'd lied anyway because that's what family did. That's not what plagiarism means, Mom. If she copied someone else's work, that's cheating. I can't believe you're being so unsupportive. Your sister needs you. My sister needs to face consequences for her actions, and I need to get back to work. You're putting some job above your family? I'm putting my career above covering for Lily's mistakes. That's not the same thing. My mother's voice went ice cold. You've changed, Claire. I don't even recognize you anymore. Good, I said. Maybe you'll start seeing me as my own person instead of as Lily's support system. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but I felt good. Strong. In my first life, my mother's disapproval would have destroyed me. Now, it just felt like static. Unpleasant, but meaningless. The scandal played out exactly as I remembered. Lily got caught in her lies, the lawyer couldn't work miracles, and she ended up with a formal academic dishonesty note on her transcript and had to retake the class. My parents spent $20,000 on legal fees and got nothing for it. They stopped speaking to me for 3 weeks. It was the most peaceful 3 weeks of my life. When they finally reached out again, it was my father. Claire, your mother and I are very disappointed in you. When your family needed you, you weren't there. Dad, when I needed my family, you weren't there either. You canceled my therapy for Lily's spa day, remember? That was completely different. You're right. Therapy is a need. A spa day is a want. But you prioritized her want over my need. So forgive me if I'm not rushing to prioritize Lily's mess over my career. He sputtered, unable to respond. In my first life, I'd never stood up to him. He didn't have a script for Claire who talked back. You owe your sister an apology, he finally said. No, I don't. If anything, she owes me several. This attitude needs to stop. You're tearing this family apart. No, Dad. You and Mom tore this family apart by having a favorite child. I'm just done pretending I don't notice. I hung up on him too. The old Claire, the one from my first life, would have been devastated by this confrontation. She would have apologized, groveled, done anything to get back in their good graces. The new Claire went back to work and didn't think about them for the rest of the day. Morrison Tech launched in January of my senior year, and I was there for every milestone. I'd leveraged my foreknowledge ruthlessly. I knew which investors to approach and which to avoid. I knew which product features would resonate with customers and which would flop. I knew which hires would be rock stars and which would be disasters. Professor Morrison, James, as he insisted we call him now, started treating me like a partner rather than a student. I'd demonstrated an uncanny ability to predict market trends and anticipate problems, and he valued my input. You have exceptional instincts, he'd said during one late-night strategy session. Have you considered skipping grad school and doing this full-time? In my first life, I'd gone to grad school because I didn't know what else to do. I'd been drowning in debt and family drama, and graduate school had felt like a respectable way to hide from my life. This time, I didn't need to hide. I think I'd like that, I said. Let's build something amazing. He grinned. Deal. By March, we'd landed our first major contract. By April, we'd closed our Series A funding round at a $12 million valuation. By May, my equity stake was worth over $1 million on paper. I was 22 years old and a millionaire. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in biochemistry and a minor in computer science. My parents and Lily didn't come to my graduation. They said they had already made plans that weekend and it was too late to change them. Lily was competing in some influencer pageant thing that she'd decided was her new career path. I didn't care. Grandma was there, sitting in the front row, crying with pride. James and my Morrison Tech colleagues were there, cheering when I walked across the stage. Dr. Chen was there, beaming. I had a family. It just wasn't the one I'd been born into. At the graduation dinner, Grandma pulled me aside. I've finalized your trust fund, she said. It's active now, $250,000 invested in a diversified portfolio. It's yours, Claire. No strings, no conditions. I hugged her tightly. Thank you, Grandma, for everything, for believing in me. Always, Claire Bear, always. That night, lying in my apartment, I thought about my first life, about the graduation that had been bittersweet because my family had come, but spent the whole time talking about Lily, about the years of struggle that had followed, about the slow spiral into depression and the cold bathtub where it had all ended. I'd been given a second chance, and I'd used it to build something better. But I wasn't done yet. The best revenge was still to come. In my first life, the final betrayal had come when I was 23, about 6 months before I died. Grandma had passed away suddenly, a stroke in her sleep, peaceful but unexpected. She'd left her estate split 3 ways, 1/3 to my father, 1/3 to Uncle James, and 1/3 to me directly. My portion had been worth about $400,000, enough to pay off my student loans, get out of debt, maybe even buy a small condo. Except I'd never received it. Lily had been in crisis again. Her boutique had failed. She was drowning in debt. The creditors were calling. My parents had begged me to temporarily give Lily my inheritance so she could settle her debts and get back on her feet. They'd promised to pay me back within a year. I'd been so worn down by then, so desperate for their approval, that I'd agreed. I'd never seen a penny of it. When I'd finally worked up the courage to ask about it, 9 months later, my mother had cried and said that I was being selfish, that Lily was struggling, that family meant supporting each other in hard times, the injustice of it, that I'd worked 3 jobs, lived in poverty, sacrificed everything while Lily partied and failed upward, and still I was the selfish one for wanting my own inheritance, had been the final crack in my foundation. 2 months later, I was dead. This time, I was prepared. Grandma was 73 and healthy. According to my calculations from the first timeline, she had another good decade ahead of her, maybe more. But I'd learned not to take anything for granted. I'd made sure to visit her regularly, to call her weekly, to build the relationship I'd neglected before, and I'd had a very careful conversation with her about estate planning. Grandma, I need to talk to you about something sensitive. About my will? She smiled, and I figured this would come up eventually. I just want to make sure that if anything happens to you, my inheritance comes directly to me, not to Dad to distribute. She studied me. You don't trust your father with it. I don't trust him to put my needs above Lily's. She nodded slowly. I've been thinking the same thing. In fact, I've already set it up that way. Your trust fund is separate, and any additional inheritance will be as well. No one can touch it but you. Thank you. Claire, I know what they'd do. I'm not blind. Your father loves Lily more than is healthy, and your mother enables it. They'd bleed you dry if you let them. She squeezed my hand. I won't let that happen. But there was another piece to this puzzle. A piece that hadn't happened yet in this timeline, but that I knew was coming. In my first life, at age 24, Lily had met Marcus, my boyfriend Marcus. They'd met at a family barbecue, hit it off immediately, and started an affair within a week. I'd been completely blindsided. Marcus had broken up with me on my birthday, 3 months into his relationship with Lily, and my parents had begged me to be understanding. She didn't mean to fall in love with him, my mother had said. These things just happen. He was my boyfriend. But were you really right for each other? You're so different. Maybe this is for the best. That conversation had happened 2 months before I died. This time, I would never date Marcus. In fact, I'd already seen him around campus. He was a year behind me, a business major with a charming smile and a wandering eye. In my first life, I'd been flattered by his attention. This time, I saw him for what he was, a cheater looking for his next target. When he'd approached me at a campus coffee shop in my junior year trying to flirt, I'd shut him down coldly. Not interested. Come on, don't be like that. I just want to buy you a coffee. I said no. He'd looked offended, like he couldn't believe I'd rejected him. Good, let him be confused. Without me to cheat with, he'd found other girlfriends. I'd seen him around campus with a rotation of girls, each lasting about 3 months before he moved on. Classic pattern. But I knew he'd meet Lily eventually. My family still invited me to occasional events. I showed up for Christmas and Thanksgiving, maintaining a polite but distant presence. I was never cruel, never dramatic, just unavailable. And I knew that at this summer's annual family barbecue, Marcus would be there. He'd been a friend of a friend, someone's plus one. I'd introduced him to my family, proud to show off my boyfriend, not knowing I was feeding him to the wolves. This time I wasn't going to the barbecue at all. When my mother called to invite me, I had my answer ready. Sorry, Mom, I can't make it. We're in the middle of our Series B fundraising round, and I need to be available for investor calls. On a Saturday? Investors are busy people. We work on their schedule. Claire, this is a family tradition. You haven't been to a barbecue in 2 years. I know, and I'm sorry, but my career has to come first right now. I could hear her frustration through the phone. You've become so cold, Claire. So focused on work that you don't have time for the people who love you. I bit back a laugh. The people who love me, the people who canceled my therapy for a spa day, who pressured me to give up my inheritance, who chose Lily over me every single time. I'll make the next one, I lied. Have fun. Instead of the barbecue, I spent that Saturday closing our Series B round. $40 million at a $300 million valuation. My equity stake was now worth $30 million on paper. I was 23 years old, the same age I'd been when I died. But this time, I was thriving. The confrontation I'd been avoiding finally came in the fall. I'd maintained minimal contact with my family for over 2 years. I sent birthday cards, showed up for major holidays, kept things polite but distant. I knew they were confused and hurt by my withdrawal, but I'd made peace with it. They hadn't made peace with it at all. My mother showed up at my apartment unannounced on a Tuesday evening. I opened the door to find her standing there looking older and more tired than I remembered. Mom, what are you doing here? We need to talk. I considered turning her away, but decided it was time to have this conversation. I'd been putting it off for 2 years, but we couldn't avoid it forever. I let her in. My apartment was nice now. I'd moved out of my studio into a spacious 2-bedroom condo in a good neighborhood. I'd furnished it carefully, making it a space that felt like mine. My mother looked around with barely concealed surprise. This is lovely. You've done well for yourself. Thank you. Your father and I have been worried about you. You're so distant now. We barely hear from you. I sat down on my couch, not offering her anything to drink. I've been busy with work. For 2 years? Claire, you're missing out on your family. Lily asks about you all the time. She misses her sister. I doubted that. Lily had never missed me. She'd missed having someone to do things for her. Mom, why are you really here? She sighed. Because we need to clear the air. I need to understand what happened to you. You used to be such a sweet girl, so caring and understanding. Now you're hard, cold. You don't care about anyone but yourself. There it was, the accusation I'd been waiting for. I'm not cold. I'm boundaried. There's a difference. You've shut us out. No, I've stopped being available for emotional exploitation. I've stopped putting your needs and Lily's wants above my own well-being. That's not shutting you out. It's taking care of myself. My mother's face flushed. Emotional exploitation? That's a cruel thing to say. Is it? Let me ask you something, Mom. How many times in my life did you cancel something important to me for something Lily wanted? That's not fair. We've always loved you both equally. That's a lie, I said flatly. You've always loved her more. Or at least you've always prioritized her more. Do you remember canceling my therapy appointment so you could take her to the spa? She waved a hand dismissively. That was years ago. You said you understood. I lied. I didn't understand. I was hurt and angry, and I spent that day having panic attacks because I needed help, and you chose her birthday celebration over my mental health crisis. You're being dramatic. Am I? Do you remember asking me to give Lily half of my college fund so she could start her boutique? My mother went very still. We never asked you to give it to her. We asked you to lend it. It was a gift disguised as a loan. We both know she was never going to pay it back. I leaned forward. Do you know what that money meant to me? It meant graduating without debt. It meant not having to work 3 jobs just to survive. But you guilt-tripped me into giving it to her, and when her business failed, exactly like I knew it would, you acted like I was selfish for being upset about it. Lily was going through a hard time. I was going through a hard time too. I was drowning in anxiety and depression, barely keeping my head above water, but you never noticed because I didn't make noise about it like Lily did. I stood up, feeling 2 lifetimes of anger finally breaking through. You want to know what happened to me? I got tired of setting myself on fire to keep you warm. I got tired of being invisible. I got tired of being the good daughter who never complained while you poured all your love and resources into the daughter who never appreciated it. My mother was crying now. That's not true. We love you both the same. No, you don't. And that's okay. Parents are human. They're allowed to have favorites. But what's not okay is pretending. You don't. And then punishing me for finally calling it out. We never punished you. You didn't come to my graduation. She flinched. We had that conflict with Lily's event. You had a conflict with your golden child's influencer pageant. Not exactly a life milestone on par with college graduation. I shook my head. You know what? It doesn't matter anymore. I've built a life without you. I have people who actually value me. I'm successful and happy and free. Free from what? From the prison of trying to earn love from people who were never going to give it to me. I walked to the door and opened it. I think you should go. Claire's, Mom, I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. You can be in my life or not. That's up to you. But if you choose to be in it, it's going to be on my terms. I'm not available for last-minute emergencies. I'm not lending anyone money. I'm not prioritizing Lily's problems over my own life. And I'm not going to pretend that everything was fine when it wasn't. She stood there, tears streaming down her face. I don't know how to fix this. You can start by acknowledging that you hurt me. You can stop making excuses for Lily and stop expecting me to be the bigger person all the time. You can start treating me like someone who matters. I paused. But honestly, I'm not holding my breath. I've made peace with the fact that you might not be capable of that. She left without another word. I closed the door and leaned against it, feeling lighter than I had in years. In my first life, I'd craved their love so desperately that I'd destroyed myself trying to earn it. This time, I'd learned that some people will never give you what you need, and the only solution is to stop asking. The final act of my revenge came not with drama, but with triumph. Morrison Tech went public when I was 25. Our IPO was valued at $2 billion. My 10% stake, even after dilution through multiple funding rounds, was worth just over $100 million. I was 25 years old and worth 9 figures. The tech press covered it extensively. I'd been doing interviews for months, positioning myself as one of the founding team members, a rising star in the biotech data analytics space. My face was in TechCrunch, Forbes, Business Insider. I made sure my family couldn't miss it. The day after the IPO, my mother called me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. Claire, oh my God, honey, we saw the news, $100 million. We're so proud of you. I felt nothing. No warmth, no satisfaction, no vindication. Just a mild curiosity about what she wanted. Thanks, Mom. We should celebrate. Family dinner, our treat. We want to hear all about it. I'm actually pretty busy. Lots of media requests, investor meetings. Surely you have time for your family? Her voice had that edge again, that guilt trip tone. I'll check my calendar and get back to you. I never got back to her. A week later, my father called. This was rare. He usually left the emotional labor to my mother. Claire, your mother says you're too busy to have dinner with us. That's correct. I think we need to have a conversation about your priorities. I laughed. I couldn't help it. My priorities? Dad, I just helped build $1 billion company. My priorities are exactly where they should be. Family should come first. Should they? Because family didn't come first when I needed therapy and you chose Lily's spa day. Family didn't come first when you pressured me to give up my college fund. Family didn't come first when you missed my graduation. I paused. But now that I'm rich, suddenly family matters? That's not. We always. Save it, Dad. I'm not interested in a relationship with people who only value me for what I can give them. You owe us respect. We're your parents. Respect is earned, and you lost mine a long time ago. I hung up. The calls kept coming. My mother, my father, even Lily herself, who I hadn't heard from in over a year, reaching out with congratulations that felt hollow and grasping. I ignored them all. Instead, I did something that made me genuinely happy. I set up a foundation. The Claire Morrison Foundation for Mental Health Support would provide therapy grants to young women from difficult family situations. No questions asked, no strings attached, just help for people who needed it, from someone who understood what it was like to suffer in silence. I also bought Grandma a house, a beautiful cottage by the lake, fully paid off, with enough in a trust to cover property taxes and maintenance for the rest of her life. Claire, this is too much, she said, crying as I showed her around. It's not nearly enough. You were there for me when no one else was. This is the least I can do. She hugged me tightly. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. Not because you're rich, because you stayed true to yourself. I also made sure to take care of Dr. Chen, who'd helped save my life in both timelines. I endowed a chair at the university in her name for mental health research. These were the people who'd earned my generosity, not the family that had bled me dry. The final confrontation came at Grandma's 85th birthday party, 5 years after the IPO. I'd kept Grandma in my life, visiting her regularly, making sure she was comfortable and happy. She'd become my real family, her and the chosen family I'd built through Morrison Tech and my foundation work. My parents and Lily were at the party too, of course. We'd maintained a cold peace over the years, seeing each other at major family events, but never truly connecting. They'd stopped asking me for money after I'd said no the first dozen times. They'd stopped inviting me to things after I'd declined repeatedly. We'd become strangers who happened to share DNA. At the party, Lily cornered me by the dessert table. She was 30 now, and life hadn't been kind to her. Her influencer career had fizzled out. Her boutique had failed. She'd burned through 2 more business ideas and her parents' savings. She looked tired and bitter. Claire, she said, her voice falsely bright. It's been so long. How are you? I'm well, Lily. You? Oh, busy. I'm actually thinking about starting a new business venture. A lifestyle brand. I was hoping maybe you'd want to invest with us. No. She blinked. You didn't even let me finish. I don't need to. The answer is no. But I'm your sister, and you have so much money now. It wouldn't even make a dent in your net worth to... Lily, stop. I set down my plate. I'm not investing in your business. I'm not lending you money. I'm not doing anything to enable you to continue avoiding the consequences of your choices. Her face flushed. That's really cruel, Claire. After everything our family has done for you, what exactly has our family done for me? She opened her mouth, then closed it, clearly struggling to come up with an answer. That's what I thought, I said. Lily, I don't hate you. I don't even dislike you particularly, but I'm not going to set myself on fire to keep you warm. I did that for too many years, and it nearly destroyed me. You're so selfish, she hissed. You've always been selfish. If taking care of myself is selfish, then yes, I'm selfish. I can live with that. She stormed off, and I went back to enjoying cake. My mother approached a few minutes later. Claire, was that really necessary? Lily is in tears. Mom, Lily is always in tears when she doesn't get what she wants. That's not my problem to solve. She's your sister. And I'm done being her emotional support animal in ATM. I looked at my mother, really looked at her. She'd aged considerably in the past few years. There were deep lines around her eyes and mouth, a slump to her shoulders that suggested defeat. Mom, do you ever regret it? Regret what? The way you treated me? The way you always chose Lily over me? Do you ever look back and wish you'd done things differently? She was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. I did what I thought was right at the time. Lily was more fragile. She needed more support. I needed support too. I was drowning, and you never noticed because I didn't make as much noise about it. You were always so strong, so capable. I thought you didn't need us. I did need you. I just stopped asking because every time I did, you chose her. My mother's eyes filled with tears. I didn't mean to hurt you. I know you didn't, but you did anyway. I took a breath. Look, I've made my peace with it. I've built a good life, I'm happy, I'm successful, but we're never going to have the relationship you want us to have because too much damage has been done. The best I can offer is polite distance. That's it? That's all I get? That's all that's left, Mom. She walked away, crying, and I felt nothing, not satisfaction, not vindication, not even sadness, just a calm acceptance that some relationships can't be saved, and that's okay. Grandma found me a little while later. You doing okay, Claire Bear? Yeah, Grandma, I'm good. I saw you talking to your mother and Lily. Looked intense. They wanted me to be who I used to be, the doormat who said yes to everything. I declined. She smiled and squeezed my hand. Good. You've come so far, sweetheart. Don't let them drag you back down. I won't. Those days are over. And they were. I'd died once, lived twice, and learned the most important lesson of all. You can't make people love you the way you need to be loved. You can only love yourself enough to walk away from people who don't. 10 years after my rebirth, I stood in my office at Morrison Tech, now a Fortune 500 company worth $15 billion, and looked out over the city. I was 30 years old. In my first life, I'd been dead for 7 years, but in this life, I was thriving. My net worth was over $200 million. My foundation had provided therapy to over 10,000 young women. I'd published papers, won awards, been named to Forbes 30 under 30 and then 40 under 40. I'd built not just wealth, but a legacy. I had a partner now, Mia, a professor I'd met at a conference, who was brilliant and kind and actually valued me. We were talking about getting married, maybe adopting kids someday, building a family based on choice and love rather than obligation and guilt. I still saw Grandma every week. At 87, she was slowing down but still sharp as a tack. She loved Mia, loved hearing about my work, loved watching me flourish. I still kept minimal contact with my parents and Lily. We exchanged birthday cards, saw each other at Grandma's events. It was civil but cold, and I was fine with that. They'd made their choices, and I'd made mine. Sometimes my mother would send me wistful texts about how she missed the old Claire, the sweet girl who used to be so understanding. I never responded, that Claire was dead, had literally died, in fact, in a cold bathtub in a timeline that no longer existed. This Claire, the one who'd been reborn with foreknowledge and used it to build an empire, was the real me. The strong one, the capable one, the one who refused to make herself small for anyone. Lily had finally gotten a stable job as a marketing coordinator at a mid-sized company. She was no longer asking me for money, which was progress. She'd never apologized for the years of taking advantage of me, but I didn't need her apology. I'd moved on. My father had retired, and my parents had discovered that without my financial support over the years, their retirement wasn't as comfortable as they'd planned. They'd asked me once if I could help out, maybe set up a monthly stipend. I'd said no. But we're your parents, my mother had said, and I'm your daughter, the one you canceled therapy for so you could take Lily to a spa. The one whose college fund you gave away. The one whose graduation you missed. Why should I help you now? They hadn't had an answer. I wasn't cruel about it. I made sure they weren't destitute, that they had enough to live on, but I wasn't going to fund their retirement after they'd sacrificed my well-being for Lily's whims for 23 years. Some people might call that petty. I called it justice. The true end came not with a bang, but with a realization. I was 33, sitting in my therapist's office. I still saw Dr. Chen monthly, even though I no longer needed it for crisis management, when she asked me a question. Claire, do you still think about your family? Sometimes, I admitted. Less and less as the years go by. Do you feel guilty about the distance? I thought about it, really examined my feelings. In my first life, the guilt would have been overwhelming, all-consuming, but now? No, I said, surprised by the truth of it. I don't feel guilty at all. I feel free. That's growth, Dr. Chen said with a smile. And it was. I'd spent my first life trying to earn love from people who were fundamentally incapable of giving it to me in the way I needed. I'd spent my second life building a life so full of genuine love and support that their absence didn't leave a hole. I had Mia, who loved me fiercely and would never ask me to make myself smaller. I had Grandma, who'd always seen me clearly. I had my colleagues at Morrison Tech, who respected and valued my contributions. I had my foundation work, which gave me purpose. I had friends I'd carefully cultivated, people who showed up for me the way I showed up for them. I had everything I'd ever wanted, and I'd built it myself. That night, I came home to find Mia cooking dinner in our beautiful kitchen. We'd bought a house together in the suburbs, a place that felt like home in a way my childhood house never had. How was therapy? She asked, kissing me hello. Good, productive. I wrapped my arms around her waist. I realized something today. What's that? I'm happy. Genuinely, completely happy. For the first time in my entire life, I'm exactly where I want to be. She smiled. Good, you deserve it. And I did. I'd died once and been reborn, and I'd used that impossible second chance to build something beautiful. Not just wealth or success, though I had both, but a life worth living. A life full of people who actually loved me, work that fulfilled me, and the peace that comes from finally putting yourself first. My family had taught me that you have to be cruel to be kind to yourself sometimes, that setting boundaries feels like selfishness until you realize it's survival, that walking away from people who hurt you isn't abandonment, it's self-preservation. And the greatest revenge of all wasn't making them suffer, it was being happy without them. I never asked them for help again, and I never needed to. I was free.